Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
Revolution.
First, what is a revolution?
Revolution is the solution, hey.
The motive of a revolution.
Well, now,
The objective of a revolution.
we televise.
And the result of a revolution. And the methods used in a revolution.
I know you know. Put my gun away. Never gonna put my gun away. Put my gun away. See them out, you better run away.
This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression.
Hello, Internet. Hope everybody is having a fantastic Monday. I already had technical difficulties right off the bat here. How is everyone? How is everybody holding up? How are you doing after hearing about Dr. Fauci's lies and having what we all knew this whole time confirmed? All the lies that he told. You got the lab leak theory. You've got the COVID death rate. You've got the efficacy of the vaccine. You've got the masks. Those are all the social distancing. All of it. All of it was lies. All of it. Literally all of it. And those are big things. Look, I'm going to try not to get mad this episode, but it's not going to happen. I already know it's not going to happen. I sat down last night to put this thing together, and I started going through my, I have a folder. I have an X folder called COVID Madness. And just going through all of the stuff for this episode, I could not help getting angry. There's so much that I forgot about. Let me do something really quick here. Just want to tell my peeps I'm live. So, all right, good to go. You know when something like really traumatic happens to anyone, like they go through a thing and it's so traumatic that their brain like blocks it out? I feel like that's happening to a lot of people, at least partially. There's so many things that happened during COVID. There was so much insanity, so much madness that it almost seems like people just forgot. I know I did. I forgot a lot of the craziness, and just going through all the things, I forgot, oh yeah, that happened, and oh yeah, that happened, and oh yeah, social distancing, the 6 feet apart, it was just made up, and oh yeah, the fair and cleavage site in the virus, and oh yeah, all of the montages talking about how safe and effective the shot was, and the no one is safe until everyone is safe. So much of it. There's so much of it. And then from all the lies, how horribly people behaved, because people bought into it. People bought into the lies. People were terrified. You know, typically people that already weren't very healthy, but it's dredging up old memories, you guys. It's dredging up a lot of old memories. So I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to start off with just this little montage because it's just, just bear with me here, folks. Try not to get too mad, but this is going to be just an episode where we review a lot of the stuff, but I'm going to focus primarily on three major lies, and that's the COVID origin, because that was a pretty big one. Then I'm going to focus on the death rate of COVID. Remember how the flu disappeared? I forgot about that. Remember how the flu in 2021 just disappeared? Where'd it go? Nobody got the flu that year. How weird is that? Why did that happen? Then we've got the vaccine efficacy. Remember, 98% effective. Then it's 96% effective. Then it's only 88% effective. And oh yeah, you're gonna need a booster. Oh, you might need a second booster. You're gonna need boosters for life. Do you guys remember how insane all of it was? It was bonkers. And I can't help it. I'm gonna get angry this episode, but let's start off with just a little montage of how insane people were. So let's go over to Savage here on X. Let's just watch this quick little montage. You guys will love it, I'm sure. It won't make you angry at all.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame The only people you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts, running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice. Well,
Oh boy. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing this episode? Well, if you guys aren't aware, Dr. Fauci was subpoenaed and brought in front of Congress this week. And this started with Rand Paul. He's been doing this for years now. And apparently he got a hold of Dr. Fauci's diary. And in Dr. Fauci's diary, there were all sorts of things that came out where he just bold-faced said one thing to the public, one thing to the corporate press, and then another thing in private. First thing was the lab leak stuff. But that's why I'm bringing all this stuff up. This isn't just, I want to relive old glory days or anything like that. In fact, I don't even really want to talk about this stuff. And again, I think that's why so many people have just kind of forgot. I think people forgot a bunch of different things. You remember they changed the definition of what a vaccine is? Do you remember that? In September of 2021, they changed the definition from a virus that a vaccine provides, it won't allow you to get infected, something along those lines. Like you won't be able to get infected. And then they changed it to some other definition. I don't have it pulled up. I should have, because I have a million different things pulled up. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to have pulled up. But from these lies that Dr. Fauci told, bold-faced lies, huge lies, it completely created the landscape of how people were going to behave during COVID, and people behaved horribly because they were scared. They were feared. They were just terrified. And what ended up happening was the unvaccinated were dehumanized to a point where there were people like Noam Chomsky talking about putting the unvaccinated in camps. They wanted to take our jobs. They did take many people's jobs. And I mean, they took the military people were forced to take it. Doctors and nurses were forced to take it. And many people didn't, lost their careers. I mean, doctors like Mary Talley Bowden, who were trying to come out with alternative treatments for COVID, like ivermectin. This episode is probably going to get taken down off of YouTube. I'm going to try not to say too many buzzwords. But they were lambasted by the media and called kooks. And one of the originals were the OG Bakersfield doctors. You guys remember them? I'll play a clip from them in a minute. I'll stop ranting so much, but let's just go over to Dr. Fauci here. Some of the contradictions that he told during this whole thing.
Meta-analysis studies show that, contrary to what we thought, masks really do work in preventing infection.
No doubt.
So no doubt.
So when you find out you were wrong, you don't double down.
People should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Right now, the message is the vaccines are very effective in preventing serious disease.
So the data are very, very clear that you need a booster.
The nature of those viruses that was studied were evolutionarily so far distant from what turned out to be SARS-CoV-2
that no matter what you did with those viruses, you would not be able to do that. Obviously, there are two possibilities that are being entertained. And I think we need to keep a completely open mind until we have definitive proof.
Dr. Fauci, did you delete any emails or records related to the Wuhan lab or the origins of the virus?
No, I did not.
Oh, look at all those. Look at all those instructions to delete
I am
emails.
very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee. I have nothing to hide. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I have not been misleading the American public under any circumstances.
So that's what he did the entire hearing. The whole time, every question he was asked, he cited the Fifth Amendment, even though he has immunity. Remember that too? I forgot about that. Biden gave him a pardon going back 10 years. What's the pardon for? Was it because you single-handedly created the standard operating procedures for how society should conduct itself during COVID? The masking, the social distancing, obviously the forced injections that they did everything but go to people's houses and strap them down and force an injection on them. And in some cases in the military, they actually did that. So this whole thing is going to be very frustrating for me. But at least there's some people now that look back on the whole thing and they're like, you know what? I was wrong. I don't know how many of those people there are. I hope there's more than a handful, but Stephen A. Smith was kind of one of them. If you guys follow the NBA, do you remember Kyrie Irving? There was two players really in the NBA that were speaking out against this thing from the get-go. And one of them played for the Warriors. I can't even remember his name anymore, but he ultimately caved and he ended up taking it. And I'm sure he regrets it. I mean, even if you didn't have any negative effects from it, the fact that you gave in, that's got to like take a little bit from your soul. Well, Stephen A. Smith went out and basically gave an apology. So let's listen to this because this was a little heartwarming to see.
There were others who had the courage to say, bump that. And one of those people at the forefront was Kyrie Irving. I bring his name up because I had my issues with him from a leadership standpoint, never as a player because he's sensational, but with him in terms of leadership. And I didn't look at it as being courageous. I looked at it as being selfish. And I watched Dr. Fauci on Capitol Hill yesterday. And the person I thought about most was Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving stood out in my mind because of the heat that he was taking. And how folks were piling on because that was just the latest transgression in their eyes that he was committing and subjecting the public to. He refused the vaccine. New York City's mandate made him ineligible for home games. And he linked his stance to people losing jobs over vaccine mandates. In my opinion, particularly hindsight-wise, it didn't make him stubborn or selfish. It made him brave for his willingness to stand up and say, nah, I'm not doing that. It's just a time for reflection and look at things differently.
I wish he would have actually apologized there, and yeah, it was a brave thing that Kyrie Irving did. But you know who were the truly brave ones in this? The people that did the same thing that Kyrie Irving did, but aren't rich. They don't have millions of dollars to fall back on. They risked their careers. Some people sacrificed their careers. Some people lost a lot during this. And they said, no, I don't care what you do to me. I'm not taking this shot. I'm not putting that shit in my veins. I don't care what you do to me. They didn't have a social media platform. They didn't have millions of dollars to fall back on. and they risked everything. Many people lost a lot from this, and they don't have a voice. They don't have Stephen A. Smith going on and talking about how brave they were. A ton of people refused to take this and risked their livelihoods not to take it. And the whole time they were lambasted by the public and called anti-vaxxers and, you know, saying you're killing grandma and all that kind of stuff. And it was truly an amazing time that we lived through, seeing how people behaved. And I meant to pull this up. Have you guys heard of it's like the 8 or 9 stages of genocide? I know, sounds extreme when we're talking about COVID, right? But one of like the tenets of this thing that happens with the stages of genocide is you have to sufficiently dehumanize a population first in order for that to happen. In order for a genocide to take place, it basically has to get public support. So you have to sufficiently dehumanize a population. You have to make them seem subhuman, like animals. And that is the rhetoric that was coming from the media. The loudest people in media, and some of the most powerful people in government were labeling people that refused to take this shot as subhuman. And I mean, it really makes you think, and is that happening anywhere else in the world right now? Or is there any entire population that has been labeled as subhuman, therefore society deems it okay to obliterate them? Is that happening anywhere else in the world right now? I don't want to get too off into the weeds, but we'll keep going. So one of the biggest lies that was told during this whole thing, there was a lot of them, was before the vaccines even came out, very early on in COVID. And it was the idea of, where did this thing come from? How did this thing appear? And what we were all told in the beginning was this was naturally occurring in some wet market in Wuhan, China. And in this wet market, Chinese people like to eat bats. That's what we were told. And then we found out, in Wuhan, China, there's a lab that works on gain of function research with coronaviruses. Right there in Wuhan, China. And Dr. Fauci's NIH, or one of his other organizations, happens to be funding that lab. Crazy. And then if you said, well, is there a chance that maybe it leaked out of the lab that was only like a level 3, it wasn't even a level 4 or the highest level lab that there was? You were called, no, that's racist. You were told it was racist to say that it could have potentially been a lab leak. It's not racist to say Chinese people like to eat bats, but it is racist to suggest that this global pandemic may have possibly started because of a lab leak from a lab that worked on gain of function research of coronaviruses. And nobody did it better than Jon Stewart on the Stephen Colbert show. I'm sure you guys remember this clip, but Jon Stewart had his career ruined for a little bit there, and seems like he's bent the knee and said all the right things to get back in the good graces of the powers that be. But this was a bit that Jon Stewart did, and I'm sure you all remember it, but it's kind of how we were all feeling at the time, and Jon Stewart certainly nailed it.
It's coffee. I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to you. What do you mean by that? Do you mean like perhaps there's a chance that this is created in a lab? There's an investigation.
A chance?
Oh, but
my
if there was
God.
evidence, I'd love to hear it.
There's
I don't know.
a novel respiratory coronavirus.
So before he keeps going, Stephen Colbert says, if there's evidence, I would love to hear it. Well, there's 2 major pieces of evidence. 3, actually. So obviously, the lab exists. It exists there. Then the fact that Dr. Fauci is funding it. But then what we'll talk about after this clip is what was found out in Dr. Fauci's NIH's own reports between like him and Peter Daszak. We'll get into that in a minute.
Overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan novel respiratory coronavirus lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird, don't you think? And then they ask the scientists, they're like, how did this, so wait a minute, you work at the Wuhan respiratory coronavirus lab. How did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle. And you're like, no, the name of your lab. If you look at the name, let me see your business card. Show me your business card. Oh, I work at the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey and then it sneezed into my chili and now we all have coronavirus. Like, come on. Wait a second.
This is what makes it so great, because humor is one of the best ways to get a point across to a crowd. And he's pointing out the absurdity of it all. What is more likely, that this virus bounced from this animal to that animal to that animal, and then somebody ate a bat? Or the lab that's right there was working on this thing and it got loose? Like, what's just logically more likely, without knowing any other information? What's more likely? And Jon Stewart's just making a bit out of it, and a lot of people started, that kind of makes sense. Then remember, I remember when I very first found out, wait a minute, hold on. You're telling me there's a lab there that specifically works on this thing in Wuhan, China? It was about 2 weeks in when I found this out. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And then I naturally had to jump to the next conclusion, like, wait, hold up. Fauci was funding this, and now Fauci is in charge of creating the entire way we go about handling this thing. I got to ask, was it released on purpose? It's a natural question to ask, a question that we still haven't gotten answered, but I think it was. But that's just my opinion, YouTube, so don't give me a strike because I said that.
What about this? What about this? Listen to this.
Wait a second.
All right.
John.
Oh my God. There's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe a steam shovel mated with a cocoa bean. Or it's the chocolate factory. Maybe that's it.
That could be. That could be. That could
By
be.
the way, I gave them all tuberculosis.
Yes. That could very well be. And Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins at NIH have said, like, it should definitely be investigated.
Don't stop with the...
Yeah, Fauci said that we should investigate the lab that I was funding.
Logic and people and things. The name of the disease.
Wait a second.
The building.
Wait a second. But it could be possible. You could be right. It could be possible that they have the lab in Wuhan to study the novel coronavirus diseases, because in Wuhan there are a lot of novel coronavirus diseases because of the bat population there.
Or it's illegal for us to do gain of function research in America, so we outsourced it to this lab in Wuhan, China. And if you don't know what gain of function research is, that's just taking a virus, whatever virus you want to think of, any virus, and making it either more deadly or more transmissible. That's what gain of function is. And the question is, well, what was that done? Was the coronavirus was COVID, the global pandemic, was that created and then leaked? Is there evidence to support that? Yes, there is. And Fauci even acknowledged it, but he lied about it.
I understand.
It's like the saying,
it's
like,
a
wait a
local
second.
specialty, and it's the only place to find bats. You won't find bats
No, but
anywhere
it's like
else.
saying,
Oh,
why?
wait, Austin, Texas has thousands of them that fly out of a cave every night. Every night at dusk. Is there a coronavirus, an Austin coronavirus? No, it doesn't seem to be an Austin coronavirus. The only coronavirus we have is in Wuhan.
Yes.
Where they have a lab called, what's the lab called again, Stephen?
The Wuhan Novel Coronavirus Lab.
I believe that's the case.
And
Now,
how long have you?
He was so good there. He was so spot on there. And, you know, I'm doing this episode not thinking that anything's going to happen to Fauci. You guys know nothing's going to happen. He has immunity. He's rich now. He got rich off of coronavirus. He got rich from this whole pandemic, book deals and what have you. But nothing's going to happen to him in terms of legal things that are going to happen to him. But I didn't even bring up the clip of him giving his opening statement in front of Congress, which I should have. But when he's reading it, his hand is shaking. It's just shaking like this. It's shaking nonstop. And to me, that's almost enough. I want to see the man rot in prison, but knowing that he is already living in his own prison for the rest of his miserable life is good enough for me. He can't walk down the street now without worrying about somebody saying horrible things to them or to him, as they should. And I mean, he's got to live with what he did for the rest of his life. So I do find some solace in that.
It's coffee. I wouldn't do that.
If you guys are watching over on X, it'd be a huge help if you went over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Just saying, if you're watching over there. Northside over on Rumble, nice to see you. Puppy Toto, I think that's how I pronounce your name. There are bats all over. Yeah, there are bats all over America, but we don't have coronaviruses. And yeah, that's exactly what Jon Stewart said. You know, millions of bats flying out of caves in Austin, Texas every night. And yeah, it's weird how why didn't the thing originate in Austin, Texas? It's weird how that goes. Danger, Fauci made more problems for himself now for not testifying. I assume whoever is covering for it scarier than whatever our government can do to punish him. Yeah, but again, and again, he's got to sit in his own self-made prison now. So I do find that somewhat comforting. But aside from the obvious, aside from the fact that there was this lab in Wuhan, China, that worked on gain-of-function research of coronaviruses, and that's where the virus originated, in Wuhan, China. Aside from that, is there any further evidence than that giant coinky-dink? Turns out there is. So this is from Kaneko the Great, who was awesome during COVID. He was really good. He if you guys don't follow him over on Twitter, you should. He's got 1 million followers. It's kind of awesome. He blew up during COVID, and he just does he does research and long form posts, and he just did a great job during coronavirus or during COVID. So he writes, January 31st, 2020, Jeremy Farrar and Christian Anderson warned Fauci that the virus might have been engineered. Scientists on the call believed the mutations surrounding the furin cleavage site could not have evolved naturally because they required an evolutionary jump not found in known bat viruses. So what is a furin cleavage site? You take DNA of something, right? And you cut a piece out and you splice something new in, to put it quite simply. That's what it was. So when they looked at this virus under the microscope, they're like, hey, wait a minute. There's a splice in here. Somebody put something into this virus. So, and this isn't the virus that they're looking at in the Wuhan lab. This is the virus that everybody got. They're like, wait a minute. When you look at this thing under a microscope, there's something spliced into it. Somebody fucked with it. So to me, that's the smoking gun. The virus itself, when you see, oh crap, somebody engineered a portion of this to make it either more transmissible or more deadly or whatever. It's like, that's the smoking gun. And that's what they were doing at the Wuhan lab. And they still call it a conspiracy theory till this day. But even the CIA, I think it was, that came out and said, yeah, we're like 90% sure that this thing came from the lab. And like, you got to ask why. Why did they lie so much? Why were they so adamant on saying that this came from a wet market? Because Fauci was funding the lab. And then if you realize that, you're like, wait a minute, hold on. You're responsible for this thing, but now you're in charge of how governments across the world react to this thing? You're in charge of creating the standard operating procedure, and you created this thing? And if you created this thing and now you're benefiting from it, we got to ask, was it released on purpose? Is there something more nefarious going on here? Many people thought that might be the case. For some reason, people still aren't. I would think that would be like the number one question. The number one thing people talk about. Was this whole thing done on purpose? And I think it was. We'll continue. They raised the possibility that the site had been deliberately inserted and then accidentally released from a laboratory. Accidentally. Fauci proposed assembling a larger group of virologists that following day, February 1st, 2020. On the call that ultimately produced Proximal Origin, 10 of 12 scientists reportedly believed deliberate insertion was possible. Fauci's notes cited Wuhan scientist Zhang Li Shi's years of gain-of-function research modifying coronavirus's spike proteins to bind human AC2 receptors. 8 days later, Fauci went on Newt Gingrich's podcast and publicly dismissed the idea. I've heard these conspiracy theories. This is a quote from Fauci. I've heard these conspiracy theories, and like all conspiracy theories, Newt, they're just conspiracy theories. In March, scientists from the call published Proximal Origin, which dismissed laboratory engineering as implausible. In April, Fauci cited a paper from the White House podium without mentioning his role in organizing the discussions behind it. Why did Fauci publicly ridicule a possibility his own specialists had privately considered credible? His agency had funded Peter Daszak's EcoHealth Alliance coronavirus research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It wasn't the NIH, that's right. It was the EcoHealth Alliance group. In 2018, EcoHealth proposed inserting a furin cleavage site at the S1/S2 junction of a coronavirus. In 2019, SARS-CoV-2 emerged in Wuhan with a novel furin cleavage site at that exact junction. The record shows Fauci knew the laboratory origin hypothesis was considered scientifically implausible. He lied to the public and called it a conspiracy theory anyway. So what is this? This is, I guess this is from either Fauci's private emails or from his diary. The highlighted portion reads, the people on the phone felt that the mutations around the furin cleavage site of the spike protein could not have occurred naturally since it would require an evolutionary jump that they found nowhere in bat isolates. They bring up the possibility that this could have been deliberately inserted and either accidentally released or deliberately released by a crazy person in the lab, the former being the most likely. So they're even asking the question, was it released on purpose? But Fauci just calls them conspiracy theories to the public. He says all these things in private and then says this other stuff to the public. So this is from February 1st, 2020. The rest felt that deliberate insertion was possible, and given the fact that Dr. Zhang Li Shi at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in GOF in coronavirus to allow a gain of function in coronavirus to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor.
Lab leak is a theory with no evidence whatsoever.
There is zero evidence that this virus came out of a lab in China.
I've heard these conspiracy theories, and like all conspiracy theories, Newt, they're just conspiracy theories.
Dr. Anthony Fauci said today in an interview with National Geographic, quote, everything about the stepwise evolution over time strongly indicates that this virus evolved in nature and then jumped species.
There was a study recently that we can make available to you where a group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human. So, I mean, the paper will be available. I don't have the authors right now, but we can make that available to you.
You know what's something else that they did during COVID? They tried to make this a left-right issue. They successfully did actually make this a left versus right issue. And it's funny because it easily could have went the other way. It easily could have been a right versus left issue if the propaganda was aimed at the right instead of aimed at the left. But the thing was, they made it a left-right issue politically, but there was tons of people from the left or people that don't follow politics or aren't into politics at all. Just, no, I'm not taking this stupid thing. And even before the freaking vaccine came out, there's tons of people that are just like, wait, there's so much weird stuff going on, starting with the lab leak theory, and then masks. Do you remember masks? Like very early on, when like right after lockdowns, right when 2 weeks to slow the spread started, Fauci goes on an interview with somebody and says, "Oh, you don't need to wear masks." Like, no, there's no reason to be wearing masks at this point. And then a couple weeks later, he starts talking about everybody needs to wear a mask. And then a while after that, it was like, you should actually be wearing 2 masks. And his reason for flip-flopping on this is that he said that we need to make sure that hospital staff, medical workers, have enough masks. So he just admitted then that he lied to the public. This is one of the first lies that came out about Fauci. And he admitted it himself. Now we're finding all the other lies that he told. And it's just amazing that there's so many people that still will just defend this guy to the grave because they bought in completely and they became awful people. And I mean, put yourself in the shoes of somebody that was just terrified of COVID, absolutely terrified. And they bought in hook, line, sinker to the whole narrative that you got to take the shot, you got to social distance, you got to wear masks. And anybody that doesn't do those things is an evil person. So I'm going to treat them horribly. Imagine you're that person, and then all this stuff comes out proving you wrong, that everything you believed was false, that everything you made your entire identity around was false. You're not going to want to look at that stuff. I mean, it's hard enough admitting that you're wrong about the tiniest thing, but when you are completely wrong about something that you made your entire identity about, and then, you know, cut off family members, cut off friends, and demonized everyone around you that wouldn't comply with the bullshit, like, why would you want to look at anything that refutes your entire worldview? That's got to be tough. And it sucks. But I mean, there's guys like Stephen A. Smith that, I mean, he said some pretty shitty stuff during COVID, but even he came out and was like, you know what, I'm wrong. And it's good to see that there's some. So let's see. So one more thing about the Wuhan lab. Let's just see what Fauci had to say here.
And people sacrifice them, particularly around holidays like the Lunar New Year. It is totally not surprising that you're seeing the facilitation of this jump from the animal species to the human. And now in the novel coronavirus.
Okay. All right. Well, that was just him talking about it occurred in a wet market again. No fake contract over on Noble. It's nice to see it. Yeah, I've only been doing a show once a week and sort of dialed things back a little bit. Bob Tiergarden, nice to see you. I got a bone to pick with you, Bob Tiergarden, about flock cameras, by the way. But we could talk offline about that. Hope you're doing well, man. Hope the running's going well. Been ramping up my mileage lately. Hopefully I can stay healthy. Yara, nice to see you. Northside, bro, miss you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. All right, so this is one of the things that Rand Paul released, and it's he released a thread on this, but I'm just going to read this one. So January 26, 2020, Fauci writes in his diary, "Now we know the market was not the source. It was the amplifier." This is in January of 2020. The wet market was already off the table in his own private notes. So in January of 2020, he already knew that this didn't come from the wet market. So let's just read this. Let's just read this whole thing. So in 2026, I don't know who the author of this is, but it says, "Game on. Things are changing rapidly. Dr. Ma Zhaohui of the Chinese Ministry of Health gave a press statement saying that the I'm an idiot. the incubation period, I'm such an idiot, that the incubation period of NCOV is 1 to 14 days, and that the virus is being transmitted when people are asymptomatic. This has enormous implications for how we handle people from Wuhan, like our diplomats who are now on their way back from Wuhan, having been ordered to evacuate. Should we quarantine them? I am very skeptical about the Chinese interpretation of their data. I spoke with Mike Ryan of the World Health Organization from Geneva, and he and Tedros are going to Wuhan soon. Mike is very skeptical that asymptomatic spread is present or, at worst, is a major driver of spread. So that's the thing too, asymptomatic spread. And if you go to Grok and ask it, hey, was coronavirus spread asymptomatically? It'll say yes, and they'll cite the CDC and all this stuff. But even them, they were very skeptical, like, wait, asymptomatic spread? That doesn't sound right. Sounds like Chinese propaganda. Mike is very skeptical that asymptomatic spread is present or, at worst, is a major driver of spread. Mike Osterholm also feels this way. I spoke with Nancy Messonnier and Bob Redfield this AM to coordinate our responses. Bob and I feel, and I told Elizabeth Cohen this, that we should be allowed to send our CDC epidemiologists to China to work with them so that we see the data firsthand, since we will base important response activities and strategies based on whether this is true. It would require our quarantining for a period of time, even asymptomatic people who arrive from Wuhan. It now appears using epi data and genomic data that the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the market. The infections spread amongst people weeks before the Chinese reported that they were dealing with a new infection, and that gave the virus time to establish itself in multi-generational sustained spread. Remember, early on, the Chinese were saying that there was no human-to-human transmission, and all the original 27 cases were from the market. Now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. Having said that, somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans. There is complete chaos in China now, with President Xi Jinping declaring an emergency situation. The Chinese are building within days 1,000 and 1,300 bed hospitals and flying in hundreds of medical personnel from the military. They have shut down travel within most of the country and have called off many Lunar New Year events. Schools closed at least until mid-February, running out of supplies such as PPE. Had an 8 p.m. call with Anthony Ruggiero, Phil Farrow, and Bob Redfield about the evolving situation. The deputeers and the White House are pushing to close the borders for any traffic from China. Bob and I are against that. Anthony said that he heard that I was in favor of that. We'll have an 11 a.m. meeting tomorrow from SCIF with Deputy National Security Matthew Pottinger regarding possibly closing the borders from China entry. So even in these internal documents, they said, no, this didn't come from the wet market. That was the amplifier, not the cause. So okay, so that's the origin. That's just the stuff of the origin. And like, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many lies told. So how did we react to all of this? We shut down the country. You know, it was supposed to only be 2 weeks, but we shut down businesses, shut down schools, shut down churches, shut down everything. And then people were deemed, what was the term that they used for people that were essential? Remember, only essential things needed to stay open. Essential things like liquor stores and weed shops, those had to stay open. But your church has to close down. Your small business has to shut down. Schools have to shut down. All of that, unessential. Liquor stores, essential. Remember that? All right. You guys remember the freaking Bakersfield doctors? These guys were right all along, and they were just destroyed in the media. These guys out of Bakersfield, California. They were some of the first people to come out and say, we are doing this all wrong. This isn't as deadly as it's being reported. And the last thing we should do is just shut down the entire world and print money and send it to people to stay home.
They have a weakened body We aren't pressured to test for flu, but ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, you know, it's interesting when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add COVID to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so. So this is what.
So so he was called a conspiracy theorist when he said that. So doctors are being pressured to cite COVID as the death on death certificates, even when it wasn't the primary cause or the cause at all of death. So I asked Grok and Grok likes to cite the CDC and stuff like that. So it's always just going to give you the mainstream answer, but I was kind of surprised in what it said here. So I said, it was widely reported that people who died during COVID, not necessarily from COVID, but did have COVID when they died, were marked as COVID deaths. Is that true? Grok says, yes, that was largely true under the official guidelines and how counts were often compiled, though with important nuances. Official COVID-19 death counts included cases where the virus was listed as a contributor, not necessarily the sole or primary underlying cause of death. In other words, people who died with COVID-19 and for whom it was determined to have played a role were frequently marked and counted as COVID-19 deaths, even if other conditions were present or more immediate. So it continues. CDC National Vital Statistics. CDC guidance for certifying deaths issued in 2020 instructed that if COVID-19 was determined to be a cause of death or contributed to it, it should be reported on the death certificate. It should use terminology like COVID-19 or coronavirus disease 2019. Pre-existing conditions that contributed should go in part 2. So the pre-existing conditions go in part 2, but the COVID goes in part 1. Part 1 of a death certificate covers the chain of events leading directly to death: immediate cause, intermediate causes, underlying causes. Part 2 covers other significant conditions that contributed but were not part of the direct chain. COVID-19 could appear in either deaths were coded to the ICD-10 code U07.1 and include unofficial tallies when COVID-19 was reported as a cause that contributed to death. This included laboratory confirmed cases as well as presumed or probable ones based on clinical judgment. So based on presumed or probable. It probably caused the death, so we're just going to mark it as a COVID death. And then you look at excess death. What is excess death? Excess death is, you take how many people just typically die during a year. Just overall, how many people die? And then you compare that to how many people died during COVID. The numbers were pretty much the same. It's kind of weird. If all these extra people died of COVID, you would expect a huge jump in excess death. But there wasn't. And flu disappeared. So weird. It's so weird how all these strange coincidences happened during COVID when everyone was being pressured to stay home, shut down everything, and, develop a vaccine, change the definition of what a vaccine is, and then coerce or, in many cases, force a bunch of people to take it. So let's go back to the Bakersfield doctors. So let's listen to one of their full 3 minutes of one of their press conferences and see why they were lambasted by the media.
Yeah, Jessica, the doctors say that they have compiled their own data of coronavirus cases here in Kern County and used their research from the cases here to cross-reference them with numbers across the nation and really across the globe. They say that that data shows that healthy people don't need to shelter in place anymore. And of course, that's going against what a lot of health experts have been telling us so far.
I say, do we need to still shelter in place? Our answer is emphatically no. Do we need businesses to be shut down? Emphatically no. Do we need to test them and get them back to work? Yes, we do.
Doctors Dan Erickson and Artin Masihi, both co-owners of the 5 accelerated urgent care facilities in Kern County, say they have tested 5,213 patients within the county for the coronavirus. That makes up for over half of all testing done here. They say their data and research qualifies their statement.
Is the flu less dangerous than COVID? Let's look at the death rates. No, it's not. They're similar in prevalence and in death rate. So we are saying that our response now that we know the facts, it's time to get back to work.
The White House coronavirus task.
So he was saying that very early on. And like now we know, even though the death rate numbers were fudged, we assume that COVID was slightly more deadly than the flu. But even if there's 2 flu deaths out of 100,000 people that got the flu, and then there's 4 flu deaths out of 100,000 of people that got COVID, they're going to say, oh, it's 100 times more, or it's 100% more deadly than the flu, even though they're both not really that deadly. And I mean, you got to look at what happened during lockdowns too. I mean, people were isolated, and many people just driven into depression. People lost their careers. People lost their jobs. People went into alcoholism. People became obese. How much death did that contribute to? How many people took their own lives because they went into such a dark hole because of what we did, because of our reaction to this thing that was a little more dangerous than the flu? Was our response to COVID more deadly than COVID actually was? I bet it was. I think it was.
Task Force expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says otherwise, with national research showing COVID-19 cases to be over 10 times as lethal than the flu. But Fauci's decades of experience as an immunologist and physician holds no weight in the eyes of Erickson and Masihi.
We're actually seeing the patients. Dr. Fauci hasn't seen a patient for 20 years.
White House health officials have reported more than 800,000 COVID-19 cases with just over 46,000 deaths across the nation. But Erickson says that quarantining is a health hazard in and of itself.
We understand microbiology, we understand immunology, and we want strong immune systems. I don't want to hide in my home, develop a weak immune system, and then come out and get disease.
Reporting the disease, Erickson claims, is being forced onto healthcare professionals.
ER doctors now, my friends that I talk to say, it's interesting, when I'm writing up my death report, I'm being pressured to add COVID. Why is that? Why are we being pressured to add COVID to maybe increase the numbers and make it look a little bit worse than it is? I think so.
According to Erickson, there is something much larger at play here.
This is not about science. And it's not even about COVID. When they use the word safe, if you listen to the word safe, that's about controlling you. So when I talk to all my ER doctors who work in a hospital, no stake in the game, same opinion.
OG Bakersfield doctors. These guys had it right straight from the beginning. Bob, did you say you run 85 miles a week? That's just so bonkers to me. I struggle to run 35, and I'm happy when I do. If I hit 40, I'm stoked. How the hell do you even have time to run 85 miles a week? I don't get it, man. That's just kudos to you, bro. That is bonkers. All right, let's keep going. So you remember how I said the flu disappeared during COVID? You guys, I forgot about that. I totally forgot that the flu just disappeared. Let's watch this quick clip here.
Happening in this pandemic that very few people are even talking about. This is typically flu season, but somehow influenza seems to have disappeared and they don't know why. And Cairo 7's Gary Horker joins us now. A doctor tells you, Gary, what is happening is historic and it actually needs to be studied.
Yeah, he's excited about this. This is some bright news in a dark time. You remember when doctors warned about something they coined a phrase called a twindemic? They were concerned people this time of year could be infected with coronavirus and influenza at the same time. Well, not only did that not happen, Monique, he tells me there are fewer recorded influenza cases this season than at any time in recorded history. Some doctors say it's because we're all used to wearing a mask and we're staying away from other people. But others theorize it's because so many of us are getting flu shots this year. But any way you cut it, doctors say there are virtually no flu cases at all this season, which they call one of the great mysterious vanishing acts of a virus doctors have ever seen.
How weird. How weird. Just when COVID happens, all of a sudden flu disappears. It's almost like all these flu cases were just called COVID cases. How freaking bizarre. So let me go over to this chart here. So this is from Statista. And if you look at this chart, let me go full screen so you guys can see this better. So if you look at this chart, you've got, starting from 2010, 2011, you've got 38,000 flu deaths. And then 2000, you had a big drop off in 2011 and 2012 down to 13,000. You know what's funny? What happened right around that period? Didn't the swine flu happen during that time period? Interesting. Anyway, you guys remember the swine flu? I feel like they tried to do this COVID thing before, like 10 years before, but it didn't take. They didn't get the propaganda right. Anyway, then it jumps up to 43,000 in 2012, 2013, 2014, 38,000. It jumped all the way up to 51,000, 2014, 2015. And then 2015, 2016, it dropped all the way down to 22,000. And then back up to 38,000, back up to 52,000 in 2017, 2018. And then 2018, 2019 dropped down to 32,000. 2019, 2020, it dropped down to 26,000. But then look in 2021 and 2022, when the COVID shot came out, it dropped all the way down to 63,000. It dropped by almost 20,000 flu deaths in 2021, 2022. How weird. And then in 2022 and 2023, it jumped right back up to 25,000, then 26,000 the following year. And in 2024 and 2025, all the way back up to 45,000. So it looks like we're not marking those COVID deaths anymore. Interesting. Interesting how the flu just disappeared during COVID. So, yeah. And then you guys remember all the montages that came out? Here's just a reminder of how insane the propaganda was during COVID. Because it was insane. The propaganda was off the freaking charts. Bob Tiergarten, COVID shutdown gave me time. Oh. Are you saying that you ran 85 miles a week during COVID? Okay, that makes more sense. What's funny is the 1 week that I ever ran 80 miles in a week, the 1 week in my life that I did that was during COVID. And I think it was like the first couple of weeks I just decided I was going to go crazy. Keep in mind, I'm a DJ, so I really only am actually on a work site 2 or 3 days out of a week. Hey, man, bro. 80 miles a week is bonkers. I don't care what the reasoning behind it is. All right, let's watch this awesome little montage, starting with Sleepy Joe.
You're going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
That was the thing too. And Dr. Fauci came out and said, "Oh, I never said that you wouldn't get it if you took the shot. I never said that." Everyone was saying that in the beginning when this thing came out. Everyone was saying this. If you get the shot, you're not going to get COVID. Everyone was saying that. And then after everybody started getting COVID, after taking the shot, they were like, "Oh, no, we never said that. We just said it would make your symptoms less." And then that actually makes you think, wait a minute, hold on. If you take the shot and it gets rid of your symptoms and asymptomatic spread is a thing, isn't the shot actually making the spread worse? Because now you're masking all the symptoms and all these infected people are going out there and spreading it. It's like their whole logic just completely ran into itself. Like everything they said was such bullshit that it contradicted itself all the time.
Vaccines are highly, highly effective.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
That's the head of the CDC. Supposed to be even more authoritative than Anthony Fauci, the head of the CDC, saying that if you take the shot, you're not going to get sick, you're not going to get COVID. We never said that.
They're really, really good against variants.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
That turned out to be complete bullshit. It didn't reduce transmission at all.
Get your first shot, and when you're due for your second, get your second shot.
Our key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die. If you are fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask.
Anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in indoor and outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing.
Remember they tried to do this thing to incentivize people like, oh, if you get the COVID shot, you don't got to wear a mask anymore and you can go outside and do stuff. And then all the people that did take the COVID shot were still too scared to not wear a mask and go outside and do stuff. Meanwhile, all of us that have been doing everything from the get-go, we're just like, all right, I can not wear a mask anymore because nobody knows if I'm vaccinated or not. Oh, it was hilarious. The whole thing backfired.
What they can't do anymore is prevent transmission.
We didn't have vaccines that block transmission. We got vaccines that help you with your health, but they only slightly reduce transmissions. We need a new way of doing the vaccine.
Did I ever tell you guys about the loophole that I found in being able to go and order food without a mask? I didn't want to wear a mask anymore, so I stopped wearing a mask. But there was tons of food places that wouldn't allow you in the restaurant if you weren't wearing a mask. So what I did is I started placing phone orders. I would just call ahead of time, order my food, walk in and without a mask and go to buy my food. And a couple of times they were like, oh, you can't, you got to wear a mask if you come in here. I'm like, well, I already ordered the food. You guys already made it. Are you not going to sell it to me? Do you think they ever didn't sell me the food? No, they already made it. They would have had to waste money. So that was my awesome loophole that I found. Just pre-order your food and you don't have to wear a mask because they're not going to lose money on it. Because they're not actually scared of COVID. They just want to be authoritarian and make sure that you put your face diaper on.
Level of virus in the nasopharynx of a person who's vaccinated and infected is the same level as the level of virus in the nasopharynx of an unvaccinated person.
Reports from our international colleagues, including Israel, suggest increased risk of severe disease amongst those vaccinated early.
And if you look at Israel, which has always been a month to a month and a half ahead of us, they are seeing a waning of immunity, not only against infection, but against hospitalizations and to some extent death. The booster might actually be an essential part of the primary regimen that people should have.
Plan is for every adult to get a booster.
Oh, God. They just kept shifting the goalposts. It's so funny. Yeah, and Israel went over the top with forcing their population to take the shot. So this clip came out a couple days ago. This is good. This is Joe Kerman puts Dr. Scott Gottlieb on the spot over the Fauci diaries. So this is a lot of people are pissed. A lot of people are super pissed about. I mean, it's weird because so many of us already knew that Fauci was lying through his teeth about everything. But this week it was like proof. We finally had the proof. And, you kind of had to look at it. You sort of had to look at how Fauci lied about the origin of the virus. Fauci lied about masks. Fauci lied about how deadly the virus is. Fauci lied about the efficacy of the vaccine. He lied about literally everything. He lied about social distancing. They admit that they just made it up. They just made up the 6 feet number. And even today, places in California, you go in like gas stations and you still see the old faded stickers on the floor that show you where to stand 6 feet apart. You still see the remnants of COVID, like a city that crumbled thousands of years ago. You still see the remnants of COVID laying around. But this little clip was I liked to see this. Trito Sack over on Rumble. It would be funny if a group of rogue men dressed in white coats tackled Fauci and repeatedly injected him with 20 or 30 COVID boosters. I don't think that would be. I'm not going to admit that would be funny. How dare you? How dare you, Trito Sack over on YouTube? Danger, it's crazy he had any credibility going into COVID because he lied about AIDS too. Yeah, what was the AIDS drug that he like that was another thing too. Dr. Drew talks about this all the time where Danger, what was the drug? I forget the name of it. Basically like when HIV started happening, they came out with this drug that they told everybody that had HIV or AIDS that they needed to take. And they all got sicker from taking it. AZT, thank you, Yara. Yeah, AZT. Like he was responsible for that too. Yeah, I know. It's amazing how much credibility. Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Danger. Like, how did he have all of this credibility going into COVID. And I remember, I mean, when I was a kid, the HIV scared the crap out of me. There was tons of propaganda around it. I grew up in the 90s, and there was tons of propaganda about HIV. And they made that movie with Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington, Philadelphia. And it was about somebody dying. It was like super sad, you know, and like, it turns out, who was it? I think it was Tom Hanks that had AIDS in the movie, and it's probably AZT that actually killed him. Yeah, AZT. That's right. All right, let's watch this clip because this was a good one to see. It's like 3 minutes long.
How about your buddy, your buddy Fauci that I've asked you about in the past? You've defended him quite a bit.
Look, I mean, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of defending
I've asked him about whether he orchestrated a cover-up of the lab origin because of his involvement in making gain-of-function research possible again in China, which he did. He knew that would come back to haunt him, and then basically told his colleagues, go with the natural origin. It was obvious 3 years ago, Scott, to me anyway, and everybody else, that he orchestrated that.
Yeah.
So like just from the fact that his EcoHealth Alliance group was funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, and then he covered up the lab leak hypothesis, even though that's where it freaking came from. Just the fact that he funded it, then he covered it up, and then he set the parameters of how he had to react to it. Just that alone, not including any of his other lies, he deserves to rot in prison for the rest of his life just for that alone, and nothing's going to happen to him.
Look, we've talked about this on the show. I think the evidence in terms of whether this was human or naturally derived, I think the side of the ledger that speaks to this potentially coming out of a lab has grown over time. And we haven't had any new evidence suggesting that this came out of a natural origin or spillover.
The latest stuff that came out of him,
it was disappointing.
Didn't he know that it was likely it was from the lab and go to great lengths to tell people to destroy emails?
Well, look, and I've looked through the emails, some of them that have been online. I think it's disappointing to see him trying to...
Disappointing? The dude belongs in prison. Disappointing? Are you kidding me?
Suppress alternative opinions, and that clearly was evidence from the emails. I thought it was disappointing. The part of it that also disappointed me was how much he enjoyed the media associated with the event and his own appearances. I think a lot of us went on the media out of a sense of obligation. It was a hard time for all of us. I know it was a hard time for you. I think a lot of us felt the obligation to inform the public, and it wasn't particularly enjoyable. I mean,
I would love to go back and see what this guy was saying in the middle of 2020 about COVID, and then after the vaccine came out. I would love to go back and see what he was saying, because now we're 5-6 years removed from this. And everybody's kind of like, we got some things wrong. No, you didn't. You lied. You spread propaganda. You spread fear. You got neighbor to fight neighbor, family member to fight family member. You created chaos in the entire country, in the entire world. And now you're just kind of like, oopsie daisy, we got some things wrong. No, tons of these people fucking don't belong in prison. Not just Fauci. Other people, Rachel Walensky or whatever her name was, from the head of the CDC, they belong in prison for what they did. And again, I think a lot of this was so traumatic for so many people that we just kind of want to move on, and we don't want to look at how bad things actually got, because it sucks. Like, we're back to normal. COVID's over. It's completely over now. Even here in California, actually. I mean, I still go into stores now and see people wearing masks. I still go into stores now, see people wearing masks and having them down below their nose. It's just like, hey, what are you doing? Like, obviously you're just wearing this to show what team you're on at this point. It's so absurd, but I think so many people, we're far enough removed from it now that we just don't want to go back. We don't want to go back and visit this. And I don't either, but I'm going to do this episode, go over the stuff, and then, leave it be. COVID's over, but never let them pull this shit again, ever. Anything like this. But in a certain sense, these same things are happening right now to the right. Like this, all this propaganda that people bought into was primarily on the left. And It's this inorganic, like organized propaganda campaigns, both from social media influencers and from the mainstream media or the corporate press that, you know, like just things that are repeated and seem inorganic, like why we need to go to war with Iran right now. We can't allow them to have a nuclear weapon. All these things that just seem super inorganic and over the top to justify a certain narrative. Are we allowing it to happen again? I mean, obviously it's not COVID, but the propaganda campaign is very similar. And like, if you didn't fall for the COVID bullshit, you shouldn't be falling for the new forever war bullshit either. I'll leave it be.
I got a lot of threats. Others did associated with that. And so to see those emails where he is evidencing some pleasure in the notoriety he achieved, that's disappointing.
It's not just, it's just outrageous if you read the diary entries. It's tough to take.
He didn't expect it. I don't know how he was speaking to his own diary.
Does having a reputation totally in the toilet at 85 years, does that hold him to account for what he was responsible for?
The Tony Fauci I saw in those emails is not the Tony Fauci I knew over the years. I mean, he was a guy who was sober, who was careful about his public appearances and his statements, was always very thoughtful.
Did you figure out the obsession with mainstream media in defending him, and, you know, Jake Tapper having, you know, multiple dinners and best friends, and what did that come from? And I know people around here that would call Tony Fauci a hero.
Yeah.
All of your neighbors that are from Iran would disagree with you. What is their religion, Danger? Curious to know. And what have we accomplished in Iran so far? What have we done? Other than blow up a school with 160 dead children in it. What have we accomplished? They're more likely to get a nuclear weapon now. Like, I like, this is the most bonkers thing with, like, I just cannot agree with you on, and I don't understand like how you're still supporting whatever the hell we're doing in Iran.
I can't dissect.
You don't know why.
How people perceived. I think different people had different emotions around
mask shut down the whole.
It was a difficult time, Joe, as you know very well, and I think people were looking for a voice that they can cling to. Maybe I
am science. That's why people don't like me. I mean, that was. You're very guarded and nice.
I was disappointed by the emails, I have to admit.
Well, we'll see what happens on Wednesday. Rand Paul's been right all along.
Look, he's held these. I suspect that Senator Paul held on to these emails and had them for a while and dropped them now ahead of this hearing. And, you know, Tony's going to have to speak to what's in those private communications.
No, he's not. He pled the fifth, and nothing's going to happen to him. So, yeah. Bob Tiergarten, nuke Iran. Yeah, that's the solution, dude. Yep, that's it. Nuke Iran, then Russia nukes us, or they nuke Israel, and just start lobbing nukes everywhere. Totally the solution. Yeah, 100%. You and Danger should hang out. Let's see. We'll keep going here. So, actually, you know what? I'm just sort of beating a dead horse at this point. Fauci lied. We know he lied. I'll do one more montage of how horrible the corporate press behaved.
Do you believe that race is, the variables are, and what the messaging should be?
My main concern is that we're not going to reach herd immunity because of vaccine hesitancy. And I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe who desperately want the vaccine right now. And they're thinking, oh, well, it's just a small percentage of people who are actually anti-vaxxers. And that's true. There is the anti-science, anti-vaxxer contingent. But I think that there are many more people, millions of people who, for whatever reason, have concerns about the vaccine, who just don't know what's in it for them. And we need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is really narrowing. I mean, you were mentioning, Chris, about how all these states are reopening. They're reopening at 100%. And we have a very narrow window to tie reopening policy to vaccination status. Because otherwise, if everything is reopened, then what's the carrot going to be? How are we going to incentivize people to actually get the vaccine? So that's why I think the CDC and the Biden administration needs to come out a lot lot bolder and say, if you're vaccinated, you can do all these things. Here are all these freedoms that you have. Because otherwise, people are going to go out and enjoy these freedoms anyway. And I fear a situation of coming into the fall where we never reach herd immunity. And then we get hit by the next surge of COVID-19 in the fall, something that we could have prevented if we just got people vaccinated now.
Thank you, Dr. Alina Wen.
I can't stand that lady. And what the hell happened to her? She just disappeared off of the face of the earth. So yeah, all right. That's, I think that's all I can handle talking about COVID and reliving old glory days. So, all right. So you know what, Danger and Bob, I'm gonna have to do an episode on Iran next week. And so Danger, he pays for his family's Starlink so they can stay in touch. He says if they get caught, they will be killed. Yeah, I don't doubt it. Like this isn't defending Iran. This isn't defending Iran at all. It's just, what are we doing? What are we accomplishing? Why is this beneficial to Americans to do what we're doing there? What have we accomplished? It's nothing. We've accomplished nothing in there. I mean, like, really, what is the biggest thing that we accomplished over in Iran? We took out one Ayatollah Khomeini and replaced him with a younger, more driven Khomeini now, I mean, the original Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, which is like a religious command to not create a nuclear weapon. Now this new guy's in there, his kid, who's all pissed off. They killed his father, his brother, many of his friends, and now he wants to get a nuclear weapon. They don't even have to necessarily make one. I'm sure they could, if they really wanted to get one, I'm sure they could try to, somehow purchase one, or I don't know. Strait of Hormuz is closed. We haven't overthrown the regime. We haven't decreased the likelihood that they'll get a nuclear weapon. Sure, we set it back, but have we decreased the likelihood that they'll get one? I don't believe that we have. All right. Well, yeah. Well, maybe I'll bring Eric on next Sunday, and we'll debate it, because Eric, my buddy Eric, you guys know him, Eric Abinante. He's more on your guys' side with this whole thing. So yeah, maybe we'll do an Iran episode next week. But I think that's all I got. I think that's all the effort I'm willing to put into this COVID episode, and I think I'm just gonna call it quits talking about COVID from here on out. With Iran coming back into the fold, the world would be a better place, and the Middle East will truly see peace. Sure. Yes, I agree that if the regime was no longer in place, that it would be a better Middle East. But I mean, what's funny is we've sort of elevated Iran as a global power now, and their trade is going to open up after all of this. And I mean, I think we've empowered the current regime by doing what we did. So, all right. Bob Tiergarten. Fuck the original Ayatollah. They did a TV broadcast where they skinned an American defense contractor alive in 1985. Did they? Was that after the whole embassy thing? I'm just giving you points. You asked how about America benefits. I'm not seeing how America benefits. If you want, give me a call. We'll chat about this. If you guys think that I'm like angry at Danger in the chat here, Danger's one of my closest friends, so we argue about shit like this all the time, and we do it in person, and we do it on the phone. So this is just how we roll. Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's all I got for tonight. It was fun. Thanks for hanging out. All you guys in the chat. Bob Tiergarten over on Rumble. Trito Sack. Trito Sack. I'm scared to read this stuff that you say. Yeah, Danger. Thank you, man. Give me a call later if you want. Bob Tiergarten. Always good to see you, man. Keep running. Love the inspiration. See, Yara, you're awesome. Thanks for being here. I think we had Triva. Nice. Oh, Triva over on X. All right, all you guys. No fake contract. Northside, miss you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Puppy Toto over on X. All right, all you guys. Thanks for hanging out. That was a fun one, kinda. Even though I got a little angry. All right. Before we get out of here, you know how we do it. We got to tell a joke from the greatest book ever written, The Truth About Chuck Norris. This is the sequel to that book. Chuck Norris Cannot Be Stopped, courtesy of Danger here in the chat. You know the rules. I open the book, my eyes go to a joke, and I read it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Chuck Norris, joke of the evening. This is a longer one. Let's see. After the deaths of 10 child actors, the producers of Sidekicks finally decided to cut the screen where Chuck Norris pats the kid on the back for winning the tournament. I don't even get it. All right. On that note, stay Calibased. See you next Sunday.